Shantideva, an 8th century Buddhist philosopher, said, "We shrink from suffering, but we love its causes." We shrink from suffering, but we love its causes. This week, we are continuing our way through the Noble Eightfold Path. This week, we're looking at right action. Last week, Em spoke about right speech. I don't know about you, but I definitely spent all week becoming very aware of my engagement in idle chatter. I was very focused on speech after thinking about speech in that way. Shantideva's quote points to something that can be learned by observing karma. The best way somebody ever explained karma to me is, if you fill up the ice cube tray now, you will have ice later. In our culture, we tend to think of karma as this system of punishment. Like if you do something bad will happen to you, but it's not really like that. It's more like there are causes and conditions, and certain causes and conditions tend to lead to certain outcomes. And if you look, you can sort of see that certain conditions and certain causes tend to lead to certain outcomes. If I don't want the suffering, where I open the freezer because I want ice and there's no ice there, the cause or condition I need to consider is I do have to fill the ice cube tray. To see causes and conditions the way they really are helps us respond more wisely. I had a friend from China who told me once that living in America, he was living in America, and he observed that Americans suffer so much because we're so sheltered from the lessons of karma. He was pointing at this like really nice, well-kept sidewalk, and he said, the shop owner keeps up this sidewalk very well because he's afraid that if one of you falls down, they'll sue him. But back in my hometown, we don't have that kind of legal recourse. And so we learned to walk carefully. And then he said to me, that's why I'm so careful and you're so careless. I don't know how true his theory is, but I do know that I think about it a lot. Often things happen and I'm like, am I being sheltered from the lessons of karma here? For Western culture, and especially for American culture to survive, we cannot look too closely at causes and conditions. Because if we're going to believe in the myth of meritocracy, if we're going to believe that we and we alone are responsible for the outcomes of our own lives, we have to ignore the context and how causes and conditions contribute to those outcomes. We have to be able to look at two people, one rich and one poor, and say, well, this one worked really hard and this one was lazy or didn't try or work hard enough. And that's the belief that our culture and economy are built on. And that belief won't hold if you consider the differences in those two people's gender or race or who their parents know or where they were born or what gender they were assigned at birth. So I don't know, maybe my friend from China had a point. And I cannot for the life of me get that American belief system out of my body. For all my preaching, rest still feels like sin. I'm still really seduced by a self-help book or a spiritual program or a bullet journal that promises to get me to stop doing the wrong thing and start doing the right thing in 5 easy steps today. I'm especially vulnerable when it has to do with what I eat or how I spend my time. But it does come out all over the place. And I know I'm not alone because as a therapist, my therapy clients tell me the same thing over and over and over again. Why do I play games on my phone when I could be writing a novel? Is what physically, mentally, and emotionally exhausted people say to me every week. I feel it like, oh, sweetheart. In the Bible, St. Paul says, I do not understand my own nature. Why do I do the things that I know I should not do and fail to do the things that I know I should? And I've heard many, many Christian sermons preached on the theme of, you know it's wrong, so stop doing it. But at this point in my life, I don't actually see much of a connection between knowing it's not good for you and doing it or not doing it. Experientially, observationally, you know it's bad, so you stop, just does not seem like a thing to me. We shrink from suffering, but we love its causes. Do you relate to this? Can you call up in your mind something that you have tried to stop or change by knowing that it's not what you want to do? It's just me and St. Paul and Shantideva. The Buddha, who lost lists, sums up right action as three things. 1, not harming other living beings. 2, not taking things that aren't freely given. And 3, not engaging in sexual misconduct. I mean, we can get into it, but as a code of conduct, that is pretty vague. Some people interpret non-harm as requiring vegetarianism. Some people believe that includes emotional harm as well as physical, others don't. There are a lot of ways to interpret what is freely given, like probably don't steal someone's stuff, but also is an apple growing wild on a tree freely given? Is the attention of a person who can't step away freely given? And there's tons of stuff to say about sexual misconduct, although most people agree that it starts with consent and involves not breaking up families, but it gets really messy really fast. Very early in the tradition, people start complaining to the Buddha that different teachers are teaching totally different interpretations of the ethical precepts, and it is confusing them. And here's what the Buddha says to that. It is fitting for you to be perplexed. I love it. It is fitting for you to be perplexed and fitting for you to be in doubt. Do not go by oral tradition, by lineage of teaching, by hearsay, by a collection of scriptures, by logical reasoning, by inferential reasoning. Know for yourselves the things that are unwholesome, the things that are blameworthy, the things that are censured by the wise. These things, if accepted and undertaken, lead to harm and suffering. When you know for yourself, then you will abandon them. He goes on to say, when you know for yourself, you will live in accordance with what is wholesome, blameless, and leads to the cessation of suffering. And the Buddha's like always doing this, right? It's like the thing that Emma was talking about the other week about renunciation. Like, if you're not doing it, it's probably because it's not time or you're not ready or the conditions aren't right yet. You need more information or you need more practice. And when it's time, like when it makes sense, you'll do it. The delusion that this kind of change should be easy or quick, it doesn't just lead to suffering, it's also not useful. Being mad at yourself for doing something or not doing something is a rehearsal of harm and aversion, and those are the things you're trying not to do in the first place. And it's a waste of time because it never works in any lasting way. It's like the finger trap, that you get. I don't know, maybe nobody does this anymore. You used to get them at a carnival, but you put your fingers in there and you pull. The harder you struggle, the greater your suffering. Quicksand, we all know what quicksand is. The harder you struggle, the greater your suffering. but you don't get any closer to freedom. You just sit struggling. So if we can't compel ourselves to act differently, what can we do? And that's where we take refuge in the Dharma. As I have told you many times, I really struggle in my relationship to my phone, right? I wish I were spending less time hanging out with it. And I know that, like, I understand causes and conditions. I get the karma of it, right? If I take my phone into the bed, I will be groggy and sad the next day. And so I could stop there and be like, well, don't do it. But I have not had much luck with that. So instead, I use the Dharma and I say, okay, that's true. I see the cause and the condition. What else is here? Even though that's true, I want to take my phone in the bed anyway. And then I keep my curiosity. Okay, what am I up to? What do I need? What would happen if I left my phone in the living room? I ask myself that question and I think, I would be stuck there with my own brain. And I ask, what would that be like? Well, I hate it. It makes my stomach hurt to think about it. I don't even want to consider it. And that is very good information about my condition. And also that same thing I feel for my therapy clients, I do when I get there, feel for myself, sweetheart. What an awful thing to have such a hard to bear brain and to live in such a hard to bear world that you'd rather feel tired tomorrow than sit with it tonight. And then suddenly through this process of clear seeing, I am practicing compassion instead of harm. You might reduce your suffering by staying with what is. This moment without distraction is intolerable. That's why I have it. That's why I'm using it. And that deserves compassion. And it might lead to a different response. Maybe I try to find some other way to take care of myself when I am trapped in my brain. That's why I'm here. I don't know about you guys. I'm trying to find another way to be with my heart to be in brain. Or maybe I climb into my cozy bed and I use the helpful distraction, but without all the self-loathing and disappointment. The cause of suffering is wanting things to be different than they are. There is suffering in wanting to be able to enjoy a moment without distraction, but not really being able to. And that's the first arrow. And then there is a painful suffering in believing that the reason you can't enjoy the moment is because you're lazy or ill-disciplined and it's your own fault and it's always going to be that way. That's the second arrow. And it's easier to start your work with the second arrow. Right action is not something you do. It's something you cultivate over and over again with every opportunity to practice, every breath, every instance of greed or hatred or delusion. You can cultivate compassionate responses by responding compassionately. You can cultivate non-harm by not harming. And then after a while of that, one day, when it's time, at least in my experience, you're like, oh, it's different now. That has happened to me so many times. For years, you couldn't stop smoking or staying out too late or saying yes when you meant no, or just busting balls, or hurting people's feelings, or being passive aggressive, or dominating the conversation, whatever your thing is. I don't know what your thing is, but for years, you couldn't stop doing it. And then it came into your awareness, what you were up to, and you started noticing it more. And you started to see what conditions you did it under, and maybe you got a sense of why you were doing it. And then after that, sometimes you noticed and you didn't like it and you stopped. And sometimes it came back full force and you didn't notice until after, or you didn't notice at all. And sometimes it went away for a long while. And then when you were with those particular people in those particular places, it just came right back again. And now you hardly do it at all. This is what the Buddha is saying. When it becomes unwholesome to you, you'll stop doing. So look, be what you're up to, get a sense of it. And then when throughout your mind and body, there is this awareness that the thing is not good for you or that the consequences aren't, you'll just stop. And in my experience, that really is how it works. As Zen monk Chunai said, hindrances are formidable and habits are deeply ingrained. So how could you neglect gradual cultivation because you are waiting for one moment of awakening? Sure can. Hindrances are formidable and habits are deeply ingrained. So how could you neglect gradual cultivation because you are waiting for one moment of awakening? It's a compelling delusion that we can strong arm ourselves into different behavior. I love that delusion too. But I know from experience that the outcome is suffering. Or it is for me. Anyway, you have to know for yourself. That's also what the Buddha said. When you know for yourself, you will do the things that decrease your suffering. And again, that is what we are sitting here doing. What am I up to? How do I act when I get distracted in meditation? How do I act when a nasty thought comes to mind? Do I practice compassion or do I practice harm? It's a really good way to learn about what you're rehearsing and also a good way to change it. So let's do that for a couple minutes. We'll sit a little.